So welcome back, drifters. I've heard your calls, I've heard your cries. Everybody's asking, where's the 67? Where's the 67? Well, it's right here, and today we're gonna get to work on it. So the first thing I gotta address is the fact that there's no floor in here. Now, we've fixed a lot of things. We're pretty much at the point where we can put the floor in, but I gotta fix some of these holes up here at the firewall. These two sections leading down to where the floor pan sits are a little bit screwed up, so we're gonna go ahead and fix those things up, try to clean up a lot of these old welds, and fix any holes that we find along the way. So yeah. Alright, so I got those things just kind of loosely in there, but I'm definitely going to have to get this dang steering rack out of here, which, that's not going to be fun. Because it's bolted onto this sucker. That's better. Nothing a hammer won't fix. Alright, well, first things first, this thing's got a lot of rust, so you never go wrong with a little bit of lube. Now that's gonna be the fun part, is trying to break this thing loose. Oh look, that don't fit. Bam, easy. Bam. Cool. Alright, so we gotta get that bolt back there, and then there's another one on the other side. And then we gotta get the 4 bolts under there, and we should be able to take the column out. The only problem is, what we gotta do is we gotta get this shaft right here pulled all the way through on the other side. Which means this piece here has got to come out, and somehow it's going to slide out, but I've got this bar here. So this might be a little bit of a pain. So this is the edge of the steering wheel. Imagine if you got in a car accident and this solid rod just goes right through your chest. Yeah, the 60s was not a time for safety, by any means. So now I just got to get those 3 bolts out, and then we should be able to pull this thing out. I don't think this does justice for just how large this rod is. Like, if you were to get in a wreck, this thing will go straight through your chest. Like, look at that sucker. What in the actual fuck? But the good thing is, now I should be able to get that piece to fit inside here, because now the steering column is no longer in the way. So, I guess that's the next step, is to do a whole bunch of tracing. Well, it only took me all day, but I finally got it in there. It may not be the absolute perfect gaps, but it's definitely going to do the trick. I still need to fill this little hole, but honestly, I'm probably going to end up having to cut all this out anyway when we put the transmission in. So, I'm probably just going to leave it for now. So here's the thing about all these repop parts. Most of them are done in Taiwan and China, and they're all done in different factories. So, sometimes you can get a great part, and sometimes you can get a part like this, where absolutely nothing seems to line up at all. So, I'm going to have to do a lot of manipulation with a hammer. I mean, you can see that, like, even this piece up here isn't lining up there. There's a weird crease here that doesn't exist there. These pieces here do not even line up with those pieces behind them, like, at all. And then for some weird reason, it's got this weird taper to it where it kind of, like, tapers in at the top, and then it tapers in down here. But you can see where there's, like, a little crease. That little crease right there, that shouldn't even be there. Like, yeah, so I guess it's time to get to work with a hammer. Alright, so it's fitting pretty good now that we got this nice and straightened out. Problem is that technically it's got to mount underneath this piece right here. So, until we can get underneath there, I'm not going to be able to get this thing lined up just yet. Problem is, my garage is a mess. And my box full of BMW parts just exploded, so I got to make some rooms because that is a definite fire hazard. Well, that was a pain in the ass, but it's done. So let's get back to working on this puppy. So there's a little bracket there. I got to cut out the old piece of floor pan, so we got just fresh stuff. And then we'll splice in the new little extension. So this is part of the reason why I hate building this car, because nothing fits right and I have to make everything fit. And now I've got this part that it fits. I still got a little bit more fitment to do, but the lines are not lining up the way I want them to, and it's bothering me. So, minus the fact that I cut this thing too big and had to re-weld it, these lines do not line up. Like, no matter what I do, those don't line up, and this is all the way up against the edge. That is very unsatisfying. And the thing that sucks about this is that I need this piece in order to do the floor pan, because I really want to get that box out of here, and I can't do that until I fix this. So now I got some decisions to make. So I'm going to sleep on this one and kind of figure out what to do, and hopefully I'll have an answer very soon. So I've had a whole night to think about it, and I've decided that we're going to turn this into the worst looking Picasso piece of crap you've ever seen. So this thing's off by about 1/2 inch. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this thing. We're going to cut out this entire section and then move it over 1/2 inch, and then we're going to take a strip out of here, put it over here, and then hopefully those things will be lined up. Because I will not be able to live with myself if I install this looking like that. There's just no way. Well, that was a lot of extra steps to make a small detail that pretty much nobody's going to see actually work. But that's just what I do. Thank God for OCD. And I may have to like tweak this a little bit just to get it to fit perfectly, but that is a hell of a lot better than what it looked like before. So I'm happy with that. So now what I got to do is I got to cut out the rest of that rust there and make a little extension for this piece. And then we should be able to actually weld these two pieces in. Maybe. Ah, who am I kidding? This is probably going to take me 3 weeks. Okay, so now we got to fix these holes. My game plan is to use a piece from there that I got right here to fix these little holes right there. So let's get to work. Okay, so this was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Let me show you why. So this piece was stamped by the factory, and these little bends offer a little bit more strength into the firewall. So the issue is trying to recreate those is incredibly hard to do with just a hammer. So it got me thinking, and I think I came up with a solution to do this at home, but it's a little bit rough and ready. So I used my bearing press, and basically I rigged up a little dolly in between here and a sledgehammer to kind of hold these plates in place, because when I first did this, it was kind of pushing these things apart, which is a problem. But now I've got it set up to where it's kind of working. The issue is these plates aren't flat and there's these gaps here. Okay, so I'm gonna put a scrap piece of metal here. This is what the bend should look like, so let's see how close we can get. So then I took the water pump tool from the BMW, and I'm basically flattening these two pieces over it, right? And then I took a spare piece of metal from when we did the frame rail on the Mustang, and that's gonna help create the mold, essentially. Okay, so then as this thing pushes down, you can see it starts to push those plates away, which is kind of a problem, but it's still kind of working. And then it'll bend up, and then it should flatten itself back down. Let's see, now we take this out, take that out, and now we kind of have the shape. It's not perfect, obviously, and obviously I went too deep. But here's the issue. So if you look here, you'll see that there's like this beveling happening, and that's because of those little gaps in the X. But, I mean, minus the fact that it's overly exaggerated because I went way too deep, it's technically the correct shape, so we just need to do a little bit less in terms of height. So now I just need to optimize this to where we can get the right depth and the right shape. So my idea is I'm going to take some square tubing, use that as like a flat edge for it to press into, and then we're just going to make like a small jig basically. So hopefully this will work, fingers crossed, because I'd really like to have those stamps in there so that way you can almost not even tell this was ever done. That's the goal. Okay, so here's the setup that I have right now. I've pretty much shimmed it out with a couple different size spacers on each side. I can use part of the old frame there. We got a couple square tubing just sitting here to kind of use something as a nice beveled edge, so hopefully that'll make it a little bit smoother. Not sure if it's going to hold up to the pressure, but we'll find out. So these are all nice and flush, and then this is the piece that I actually made. So I basically welded two pieces of that frame that I cut up, and then I welded this piece to the back of it, so this is the actual impression, and then these wings are basically what's going to help flatten it down after it curves upwards. So hopefully there's enough strength that this should be able to bend the metal. So let's get a scrap piece and test it out. So the big question is whether or not this is going to be a big enough gap. If I have to, I'll just shim the sides until we get it the right size. So let's take one of our scrap pieces and give it a shot. All right, let's take a piece like this. Go right in the middle, just make it easy. And then we'll pop this on here, something like this. Oh gosh, I hope this works. See what we're working with. Hey, that looks pretty dang good. That's not perfect, but wow. So check out just how good this thing fits. Like, that is very, very close to what the original stamp looked like. So now comes the hard part of making it actually work on the real piece that I made. So I got a lot of measuring to do. All right, well, oh God, I don't want to do this. Let's go. Oh boy. So that didn't bend the way I had hoped because I didn't think about the front side of it. Now I got this little bend. Well, that's not exactly what I was going for, but better than nothing, I guess. So a little bit of hammering goes a long way. I got it pretty close. Luckily, a lot of this is going to get cut off anyway. So now I got the line for the next one, and we're going to try to press that too. What do we end up with? So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to try to fix it with a hammer. Alright, so I actually did something that worked for once. Look at this. Yeah, it actually lines up. It fits very well. Like, I gotta finesse it a little bit, but it works. Something I did actually worked. The only problem is I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually get the entire floor pan in this video because I'm running out of time. This has already taken me weeks, and yeah, we're not even close to putting that floor pan in, so bear with me. I mean, I still have to prep the entire floor. I need to sand down all this rust, make sure the thing is completely clean. I still got to paint this whole area. Like, there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be done, not to mention the fact that I keep running into issues. So my dad had a friend that was donating me this drill press, and I haven't used it yet, and turns out they forgot the chuck, so I don't have a chuck, and I just tried using the chuck from my drill, and it didn't work because it was too small. This is like a 5/8 chuck, so I'm going to go get me a chuck from Harbor Freight, and then hopefully get back to getting this thing done, because, yeah, this is why things take forever. Well, that's a pretty cool bus. Too bad we're stuck in traffic. I love how getting a $5 tool took me 2.5 hours, and I'm still not home. Gotta love it. But it's all good because we got the chuck, so let's go drill some holes. But now what I gotta do is drill all the holes in here for the frame rails. That way we can spot weld this thing on there, and then we're gonna do all the butt welds now that we got this thing kind of fitting pretty good. So yeah, let's get to drilling. That was sweet. Well, made a little bit of a boo-boo. Totally forgot about the torque boxes. They need to go underneath where this floor pan extension is going to go. The other thing is, this flips upwards. This flips downwards. So that's kind of a problem, because they just kind of hit. So now what I got to do is I got to flip that little thing right around. Not a huge deal, but I wasn't planning on doing torque boxes in this episode. So, here we are. Okay, so I kind of finagled that one in there. It's not perfect, but it's in a decent spot. This one over here, I'm running into a little bit of a problem because this one, the flap's going up, and it's hitting right up there, so I'm going to have to trim that to make a slot, so this way this piece can come all the way up. But then I should be able to get that top piece on, and I already checked, and this bottom piece over here fits right in there. So once we get those in, we'll be able to slide it back here, weld it to the back, weld all this up, and then weld those suckers up there. So far, so good. Okay, so let me show you what's going on because I kind of run into a few issues here. Number one was that this box didn't quite fit right, so I had to kind of bend it to fit this shape pretty good. I've got it pretty close, and I think once I start like pinching these things together with clamps will be good. So luckily I have a mark here from where it was before, so we're pretty close to where we need to be. I just need to make sure this thing's lined up. It's lining up pretty good here. It's lining up okay under here. Once I put the jack up, it pushes this where it's supposed to be, so we're good there. The other parts right here, you can see that when this thing's clamped up, it sits pretty good. I had to bend this thing out of the way. I'm going to end up bending these two right next to each other, so it should be nice and level. So this torque box is in pretty good shape. It sits on top of the frame rail, and then the floor pan sits on top of that. The problem is this panel here is all kind of beat to crap. So like this metal here is okay, pretty decent, but when you come up here where it's supposed to mount to this piece, it's all rusted through. There's actual holes. So like you can see, like there's a big old hole right there. This whole section's been mangled. I fixed this at one point, but I mean this piece is just so far gone. So I think what I ended up doing is cutting this thing out and then welding in the new one in there. Problem is I don't want to mess with this too much because this affects how the door frame sits. And right now it's sitting pretty decent. The only thing is this thing's got a couple spots in here where there's a little bit of rust buildup. But I think I'll be able to fix some of this without having to go too crazy. Because if I really want to remove this entire panel, I would have to cut out this entire dash, and this entire dash is actually not that bad. But what the hell do I know? I'm just some guy on YouTube. You know, it's weird. It's kind of laid out, and I've been having some nostalgia about my brother Austin because, like, we used to work late at night in the garage, working on different projects and stuff, and it's really weird trying to adjust to doing everything by myself now. Like, I really miss those nights when it's just nice and peaceful out. We're just wrenching on a vehicle. Like, there's something really special about that, and now it's a little different now. It's just me. It's not to say that I won't make new memories or have good experiences working by myself. It's just, I don't know. I've just been kind of in my feels tonight. It's just something about realizing that like that period of time is just gone, and I guess I just have to start something new. But anyway, that's enough about the sad stuff. I really need to whip out the grinder, but it's a little bit too late because this thing isn't quite perfect, and I'm way too much of a perfectionist to weld this on there right now. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna wait till the morning and get this thing cleaned up. So I guess I'll see you now. This thing's really close, but it's just slightly off. You can see inside here, there's like one spot where it hits, like up here. If I close that gap, it's hitting down here, so I'm going to need to clean that up just a little bit. But everything else is pretty much where it needs to be. And then I should be able to zip this thing on. I think the hardest part about welding is actually grinding. So you can see that there's just a little bit of light between that crack, so it's just enough to do a good seam weld. We got this piece lined up really good up here. And then when you come up here, you can see that we got a nice good line right there, as well as a good line right there. So we'll be able to weld this whole thing all the way in. So the only thing that I'm a little bit concerned with is just this spot here, but I'm going to be able to adjust that using the jack down there. There's just a lot of flex in this thing right now. So I definitely want to get this thing lined up. We're basically going to use this little body mark here because there's one on this side as well, and then we should be able to get it figured out pretty good. So let's get started. So I actually had to run to Home Depot and pick up some of these clamps because they weren't fitting in here right. My other ones were a little bit too big, so I had to get the little stubby ones. But now we're on there. I got it clamped up pretty good. I'm using the alignment mark I have up top because the bottom one is that scrap piece I made, so I really have no idea where that one goes. But it looks way better than what the other side looks like. Let me show you. So I think at some point this one's been replaced because look, this doesn't even line up at all. This bottom one's okay, but the top one is like way off. Yeah, this one's pretty bad too. So I also had to set up a jack here to try to balance this thing out because I don't want this thing to be on level. Luckily, it's looking pretty good right now. I would say that's pretty level. So now that I think I've got it fairly level, I'm going to try to start lining this thing up over here, which you can see my alignment mark is pretty dang good. Not perfect, but pretty good. I don't have an alignment mark for this bottom one because that's the scrap piece that I did. But yeah, so now I should be able to tie this sucker in there, and that'll be one side done. Well, anyway, let's get this thing tightened up. Alright, so I've been doing some test fitting and I got this thing in here pretty good. It's not clamped on or anything, but it was a really tight fit, but it's fitting pretty decently. So now what I need to do is take this thing out, and then I'm going to go ahead and spray paint it with some Steel-It. I had to actually use a jack to get this thing up there. Check how stuck this thing is. Woo! Holy crap. That is a tight fit. Alright, let's go ahead and paint this sucker. Not bad. Looks pretty good to me. I gotta say, I definitely like how good this Steel-It stuff is because it looks really, really nice. This stuff cured overnight and now it's looking like a brand new piece, and the good thing is this stuff's actually weldable. So, yeah. So I put some Steel-It on this thing just to make sure it's completely covered. I also got some on this side too, just so that way it's completely sealed when we put this thing in here. So now comes the fun part of putting this thing in. So I got this thing in here pretty good. I got these seam welds taken care of. So everything lines up really good. The only problem is now I'm working on getting this piece in. And I finally got it fitting just about right. But it was quite the pain in the neck to get correct. A lot of these things were not fitting real well against this edge here. This piece over here was not fitting right. So we got that worked. And now this thing's fitting pretty flush right there. The big reason why this thing was a problem was because this little flap here was hitting and it wasn't allowing it to adjust properly, but now it's nice and flush. Everything's lined up pretty well. So I still got to tap this side flush just to make sure it's nice and flat, but I'll do that also when I'm welding. It'll be a little bit easier to do then because it'll be all nice and warmed up. So the only thing I got to do on this side is get this thing primed up and then we'll weld it on. Alright, I think the paint's dry enough, so let's go ahead and throw this thing on there. guess I didn't get all the seal it up that I thought I did because this obviously didn't stick. Fun. Yeah, it's been one thing after the next. I wrecked my truck, and yeah, so I guess now I'm going to go ahead and try to do this and salvage what little bit of dignity I have left right now. Well, I got this thing in here. The only thing I didn't do was this little piece right here because I want to make sure it's going to fit the floor before I weld that fully in. But yeah, it's there. The only other thing I got to do is this gusset here, but it's not quite ready to go on because I got to clean this up and, well, it's late again. Well, I'm going to call that a win because, man, I've been batting 1,000 today. So, yeah, this is pretty much all I'm going to get done in this video. I know I really want to get the floor done, but it's just not going to happen. I'm actually going out of town tomorrow, and I won't be back for like 3 days. So, yeah, I need to get a video out. Well, I'm going to go cry over my broke-ass truck and try to figure out what I'm going to do with that thing. But in the meantime, I hope you have a great day, and I'll be sure to see you in the next one. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's that when life gets a little bit messy, sometimes the best remedy is to get your hands a little bit dirty. Till next time.